For the first time in Hyakkimaru's life, he is able to hear, but all it brings him is pain and suffering. Get ready for a slicing and dicing good time, my friends. It's time to dive into another episode of Dororo, an episode which absolutely blew me away with its animation quality and its amazingly disturbing ending. What's really great here is that we are finally introduced to that female character who's been appearing in the intro, and the intro will indicate that this is going to be the love interest of Hyakkimaru, and it certainly seems like it is going that way in the story. However, I have a feeling that this is a story arc which is going to end in tragedy, and it's all really building up to that at the very end of this episode here. So let's just talk about some of the finer details. This episode deals with Hyakkimaru learning to hear for the very first time, and as you would imagine, someone hearing for the very first time, everything has got to be a little overwhelming. They're in the middle of a really quiet forest, but the only thing that Hyakkimaru can hear is the sound of pretty much everything. Every single creature, every blade of grass. Any single time there's some movement, it is literally reverberating throughout his entire head. You could drop a pin on the floor and it would probably sound like an explosion to him, and so it causes him a lot of pain. This is when Dororo decides to help him out by tying up a cloth around his head, which admittedly does look pretty funny. It also looks like their group is going to be joined by the old priest again. He actually ends up saving them from this giant bird which attacks them at the very beginning of the episode. The scene itself is visually stunning, and it also serves to highlight that while Hyakkimaru can hear, he's now incredibly distracted by all of these noises and can't fight properly. It's not until the priest comes in and he ends up slicing and dicing this thing up, which is pretty damn awesome. The actual bird monster itself is really not all that impressive, and I swear to God it looks just like Firo from Pokemon. After killing the beast, Dororo and his crew decide to take a rest, and the very next morning, Hyakkimaru is awakened to the sound of a woman who is singing a beautiful song. He eventually walks out into the middle of the woods to a river where he sees this young woman who's bathing, and he just sort of casually walks up to her as if he's finally found peace in his life. This young woman decides to help him, Dororo, and the old priest out by bringing them back to her village, which apparently is just filled with a bunch of amputee orphans. This young woman who goes by the name of Mio is sort of like the surrogate mother of all these orphan children, taking care of them and doing anything she can to make money to help them out. The problem is, they just so happen to be in the middle of this big war zone. Daigo's clan is going to war with the Sakai clan, and it's causing trouble for a lot of people. What Mio is doing in her spare time is that she's going out every night in order to help out these various armies and doing any sort of job that needs to be done. Now, at the beginning of the episode, it's unclear what this is. By the end of the episode, however, it is the very disturbing reveal that she's essentially prostituting herself. She's allowing all of these soldiers and samurai to have their way with her, and it's an incredibly disturbing moment, especially how it's coupled with this amazingly intense sequence at the very end of the episode. You see, while all of this is going on, the priestess is desperately trying to find a safe place for Mio and these children to live, and he does find somewhere which seems like it's going to be a very lush and secluded area, which will allow them to live peacefully and maybe even grow some crops and even have some sort of a semblance of society. The problem is, it just so happens to be right next to the nest of a giant antlion demon, so both the priest and Dororo are going to have to get in there and do some fighting. But like I said, Hyakkimaru is kind of at a disadvantage now, considering that he can basically hear everything, and it sort of messed with his fighting style, to the point where not only does he not really kill this thing properly, or at least that's the implication, but he ends up losing a leg in the process, just screaming in agony for the first time in the series. I have to say, it was really shocking actually to hear some, voice, some audible coming out of him, because we've never heard it before at all. And the reason this scene is so highly disturbing is that this is the big reveal when Mio is actually a prostitute, and it's all because Dororo decided to spy on her a little bit. And the way that these two scenes parallel one another is honestly one of the most haunting things that I've actually seen from the show, with her essentially just whoring herself out to these three soldiers, all the while Hyakkimaru had actually lost a leg and is screaming out in agony. These two characters who have been destroyed and desecrated by this world, suffering in silence. It's really disturbing, and it shows that these two characters are basically going to be made for one another. But where this actual story is going is interesting, as, you know, they could just go the standard plot of this is going to be the love interest of Hyakkimaru, or they could do something a little more bolder here by actually killing off this character, which is going to have a massive effect on Hyakkimaru's character. The fact that he can now hear is also really important because it's her song, the only thing that really seems to calm him down and the only thing he seems to genuinely enjoy hearing. It's really tense stuff, and it made for one of the most hard-hitting episodes of the entire series. But there's a number of other highlights, and we'll talk about those in the rundown of this episode of Dororo. This is, without a shadow of a doubt, one of the best episodes of the series, from a characterization standpoint, from an action standpoint, and just from a plain animation standpoint. There were a lot of really amazing moments in this episode that were animated so well, whether it be the action scene at the beginning, which was hard-hitting, violent, and extreme, especially with the old priest taking out this giant bird, or maybe it's just the beautiful scene of Mio actually singing, the way that the character actually moved and animated. It truly felt otherworldly in a sense, and it really just sort of sucked me into this episode all the bit more. And of course, Hyakkimaru, whenever he's in action, watching him fight against monsters is just always a highlight, mostly for his unique fighting style, but it was really shocking how at the end of the episode, he was so severely injured, where initially in the series, he almost seemed like he was invincible. But I think this is actually a really great way of displaying that while he regains a lot more of his humanity, so to speak, he actually starts to become weaker. He has more weaknesses now. It's weird how he was born as just a normal human, but when he had all of these things taken away from him, he was almost an entirely different being. By gaining all of these things back, he's essentially just a normal human again, and he's going to have to learn to fight back against these things in a completely different manner, and in a way, he's going to have to learn how to be a human all over again. It's really damned awesome, and I am truly loving it. Like I said, from a production standpoint, this is one of the best looking episodes from the series, and they even do a pretty good job of introducing some brand new characters and some more kid characters for Dororo to actually interact with. And again, this is another one of those situations where they're like, oh great, more kid characters. It's probably going to ruin everything. And it actually doesn't. A lot of these kids are incredibly tolerable, and the way that they're handled actually makes it really fun to watch. Dororo still continues to be a good character, sort of being the voice of reason and the most normal character that the audience can identify with, and he acts as a great juxtaposition and a great companion to Hyakkimaru. And I'm glad that we're going to get to see more of the priest, because that guy's just fucking cool. I mean, come on, that scene where he fought against the giant bird at the beginning, like, that was one of the most satisfying things that I've actually seen from the series, and watching him fight together with Hyakkimaru is awesome. He might be a frail old man, but this dude is a freaking badass. And so is this episode. It was awesome. I really loved it. So I'm going to give this one right here a 5 out of 5. Atmospherically, one of the best episodes of the series. An introduction to a great character who's probably going to be a love interest and a catapult for making Hyakkimaru a much more interesting character. I'm just pumped to see where it's all going to go from here. I'd love to hear from you guys if any of you did watch the episode. Tell me what you thought about it in the comment section below. If you had any favorite moments from this episode, what did you think about the character of Mio? Do you think she's just going to be the standard love interest, or is there going to be another reason for her character? And what do you hope to see from the rest of the Dororo anime series? Thank you all for watching this review. I'll see you all next time, and as always, stay down, baby.